Hello everybody and welcome to week 8 of the NFL season. Today we're going to be doing a first look lineup. This is more of an optimal like cash game type build, and really it's just my initial thoughts going through each position and the salaries and seeing if what I think is mispriced or overpriced. Had some really good plays. If you watched my top 10 under 5% this past week, we had McLaurin in there, I had Kyle Pitts in there. Even so, like Aguilar, Allen Lazard, those were all some of the plays that I had as my top 10 under 5%. Hopefully there were some tournament winners that you found in there. I made the big mistake of, I had a bunch of those good plays, but I had more Adams than Cooper Kupp, and well, we know how that went. So starting at the quarterback position, let's run through these. So we have Josh Allen going against Miami. I don't know what's going on in Miami right now, but man, that team is just terrible. They're sticking in some of these games, like they're keeping it close, they're playing from ahead, but then they lose the lead. I don't know. I think Buffalo easily wins this game. It is a divisional game, so I think it could be closer than people think. But I mean, Allen's always going to be a good play. 8,100 is still a decent price tag for him. Stafford going against Houston. I usually like playing Stafford in games where I think the game's going to be closer. I didn't think the Lions could keep it as close as they did with the Rams, so I didn't really play much of them this past week. And I kind of think of the same thing with Houston. Like, I can just see them getting a lead and then relying on Darrell Henderson more. I know he's like one of the front runners for MVP right now, so maybe he'll just try to pad these stats against these bad teams. But, you know, I usually like finding the games that I think could go back and forth and shoot out. Jalen Hurts going against Detroit. I think he's just a great cash game play every single week. I think he's the only quarterback to finish as like a top 12 quarterback every single week he's played. In real life, I'm not convinced he's a good quarterback yet. But for fantasy purposes, this guy can have like 2 points going into the fourth quarter. Like, it seems like every week it's like, oh, he busted, and then he ends up with like over 20. Like 25, 31, 23. He's just he's one of the safest, if not the safest, like cash game play you could have, because he's never priced at like the Josh Allens and the Mahomes and the Kyler Murrays. He's always priced lower than them, but he gets, you know, he pays off his salary every single week. Joe Burrow going against the Jets. Again, this could just be, I think Zach Wilson went down. They might be starting like Zach Wilson's backup, which, I mean, that's got to be pretty bad. I mean, I don't know what the spread in this game is, but it probably should be like 2 touchdowns. I just don't see how the Jets can keep this one close at all. You know, again, that makes me like Mixon more just because them playing from ahead. Ryan Tannehill going against Indy. Now, this is a game, and I don't think for cash games you play them, but this Colts-Tennessee game, I see going back and forth. I can see this one coming down to the wire. So I will have both interest in Tannehill and Wentz. Man, I like that price tag on Wentz a lot. Wentz has been playing much better. I know there were some funny turnovers in the Sunday Night Football game, but that was a crazy weather game. So, and besides that, he's actually looked pretty solid this year. So yeah, 5,700, that's a really good price tag on Wentz. Winston going against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's secondary is, I know Justin Fields couldn't take advantage of it, but Justin Fields is just bad at this point in my opinion. But Winston, I still think can sling it. I'm filming this video on Monday, so the Saints-Seahawks game hasn't happened. But I don't know, depending on how that game goes, I can see more people coming on to Winston. But I don't know, we'll see. I like Winston, especially if you can get like Michael Thomas back or something before this game. I will have some interest in Winston this week. Okay, so this situation in San Francisco will be interesting, because if look at Trey Lance at 5,400. Now that the 49ers have started 2-4, if they announce Lance as the starter going against Chicago, with the amount of rushing upside Trey Lance has, like we saw him put up 20 fantasy points in his first, like when he just played for a half. He just has such a high floor. At 5,400, he needs you in like a cash game. He needs you like 15, 16 points to just pay off his value, and I think he can easily get into the 20s. If Jimmy Garoppolo starts, I don't want to play Garoppolo at all. But if Lance is the starter, I do think for fantasy he's a great play. So I'm going to just put him in my first look lineup. Now, if Lance doesn't play, it's probably between Lance and Wentz for like cash game if you're paying in the 5K range. And then if you go up, I'd just go up to Jalen Hurts. So I don't know. I think for cash games, you're playing Jalen Hurts, Wentz, or Lance if he plays. But I'm just going to put Lance in here because I don't know. I could see them starting him this week. Let's go into running backs. We finally saw the alien that is Derrick Henry, the machine super freak, have a down game. I think he still had 30 rushing attempts and 2 receptions. If you were to tell me that the Titans blew out the Chiefs and they were playing with a lead almost the entire game and Derrick Henry had 30 rushing attempts and 2 receptions but didn't tell me how many yards, I would have said I want him in every single lineup. But then he only finished with 86 yards on the ground and he caught the 2 balls for 16 yards with no touchdowns. So he did not end up in any optimals. He ended up being a bad play. But man, his volume is just ridiculous right now. It's so hard to fade him every week. You know, I think you just have to at least have some exposure to him every week. Sometimes for cash games, he just doesn't fit because there's some other plays, like last week when Antonio Brown was ruled out, like Godwin was like a must play for cash games. So there's pieces that become must plays that sometimes you can't get up to Derrick Henry, and that's kind of what happened this past week. Najee Harris's workload is pretty nuts. You know, that's pretty. He's had 50 rushing attempts in his last 2 games, and he's getting 7 and 5 targets. I mean, that's as elite as they come. Najee is one of the cash game plays of the week. DeAndre Swift is getting so many targets, like 6+ targets is his like floor every single week, and then he still is getting 13 attempts and some goal line work. Even with Jamal Williams rotating in there, I mean, Swift is becoming more and more like an elite running back play in fantasy right now. So let's see. I think you're going to want to play one of Najee or Swift. Najee's going against Cleveland. That's a worst matchup. We're just going to put Swift going against Philly. Philly's been kind of getting beat on the ground. Darrell Henderson is still so cheap. I know he didn't pay off his price tag against Detroit, but that game started off really funny with the Lions getting a lead, then they recover an onside kick, and then the Lions had a lot of extra possessions in that game just because they were doing these like trickery plays that paid off for him, like these fake punts that turned to. So I don't know. I think when you get a running back like this in an elite offense, you know, it's just, and now he's even cheaper than he was last week, going against the Texans, who, like I said, I think they can handedly beat. I'm going to put Henderson. He's going to be a lock for me in cash games. I do like James Robinson against Seattle. We'll see what Kamara does tonight, but I expect him to shred this Seattle defense. The Seattle rush defense is so bad, and Robinson has pretty much taken over the job. Carlos Hyde isn't rotating in as much as he was at the beginning, so I do like Robinson going against Seattle. Damian Harris, like I've been saying, they're a run funnel defense. They want you to run against them, and I think the Patriots will have no problem doing it. So I have some interest in Damian Harris in tournaments. Hubbard, he's someone that you have to consider for cash games just because of his target share and the rushing attempts and the goal line work. It's just the Panthers have not looked good the past 3 weeks. They haven't had many scoring opportunities. But when they're there, like, it's Hubbard that's going to be getting them. And at 6,000, he's a pretty solid, like, you can consider him in cash 100%. I don't really like any of these plays. They just have kind of bad matchups, and some of them kind of split work now. Let's see. I know Miles Sanders. Okay, so if Miles Sanders does not play... Okay, Kenneth Gainwell. If Kenneth Gainwell was like the starter going against Detroit, I was so mad. That's the other mistake, the big mistake. Miles Sanders was one of my favorite plays this past week. And, you know, first drive of the game, he gets like 5 carries. Finally, they were getting him involved. He had like 30 yards on 5 carries, and then he injures his ankle or something, and he's out for the game. It was very tilting. If he's out and Kenneth Gainwell is the starter, I know Boston Scott rotates in there too, but at 5K with the amount of targets Gainwell gets, and will be more involved splitting the carries with Boston Scott. I think at 5K, that's a solid price tag. We'll look at some of the receiver plays to see if we need to save money at the flex. Like always, I'm just going to go through the defense. We always just, in the first look, we try to pay. The Cardinals were kind of a lock for cash this past week because they were only 3,100 going against the Texans. That was a complete misprice. But it doesn't seem like there's anything that stands out like that this week. So, you pay down Washington going against Denver. That's a fine pick to save you some money. And then tight end we usually pay down, especially there's no Kyle Pitts is like the #1 tight end this week, and Kyle Pitts. In a couple years, I think everyone will just agree he's the best tight end in the league. Like, this guy is a freak talent. That one-handed catch he just had was insane. He's had 2 of those this year already. I know everyone now with Kelsey's, the unquestioned best tight end. And I don't know. I think it's becoming closer. I think Pitts in his rookie year is making a case to be like the best tight end. But I don't think at 6,300 you can pay for him in cash games. Hawkinson going against Philly is going to be, I'm going to want to play a ton of him in tournaments. Philly gets destroyed. They're like a tight end funnel defense. They keep the ball in front of them. They don't give up like these big explosion plays that much. Darren Waller, I was wanting to play all week, and then he just injures his ankle like the day before. And then his backup goes in there and scores it was like 6 for 60 and a touchdown. So I could only imagine what Waller could have done to that Eagles team. And Hawkinson is a very, very good tight end. And I think that he could have a really, really good... That should be the Detroit Lions game plan. It's just to feed Hawkinson. So he's probably my favorite tight end play of the week. But for cash games, usually you want to pay down. And I think the best play is going to be Ricky Seals-Jones at 3,800. Denver has been pretty solid defending tight ends, but for he's seeing 7, 6, 9 targets, and at 3,800, that's very, very, very good. But again, I love Hawkinson this week. Gesicki is playing at a really high level right now. Buffalo has been very, very good at stopping tight ends. So I think if a lot of people are coming onto Gesicki, now that he's had multiple top 3 tight end weeks, I think it's time to come off of Gesicki and go to somebody like Hawkinson, who has burned, people that have been playing him, it's been you have 3 points, 8 points, 4 points, 15. Besides the first 2 weeks when he looked like everyone was like, man, I should have drafted more Hawkinson in season long and all that. And then he kind of puttered out. Well, this is just an amazing spot to get back on Hawkinson. I really hope he somehow flies under the radar. I doubt he will. But I think he will be lower owned than he should be. For me, it's going to be, I won't even play Ricky Seals-Jones much in tournaments just because I don't think his upside is all that much. But for cash games where you can get 9, 10 points and be happy, it's fine. But yeah, I think it's Ricky Seals-Jones probably in cash, but then it's, Goddard, Hawkinson, and Pitts for tournaments for me. Now going into the receiver position. So this is where I made my mistake last week. I played Adams over Kupp, and in the past, Adams was just a lock and load every single week. And this year he's had a little bit more up and down. He still did fine. He had it was 6 for 70 and a touchdown. And the game started out great, against Washington. It was in the first drive or second drive, Adams scores. He has 12 fantasy points in the first quarter. I'm thinking it was a great decision to play Adams over Kupp. And then he just really didn't do much the rest of the game. I'm shocked because Washington was rolling out 4th stringers in their secondary. But he just didn't get there. This week, there's no Adams, so I don't even have to make that decision. He's on the Thursday game. You play Cooper Kupp. What he's doing right now is he's getting 12, 13 targets a game. The Texans can't stop him. He's kind of just in a tier of his own right now. And I think for his floor in cash games, you play him and you still play him some in tournaments. Let's see, because now that leaves us with $5,300. We need to come down here to save some money. Oh, it's pretty ugly at the cheap receivers. Let's see here. Oh man, Odell Beckham at 4,600. Never thought I'd see the day, and I still don't want to play him really. Like, he's at 4,600, and I'm still like he should be cheaper. He just does not have it anymore, I don't think. And it's funny because Tim Patrick at 4,700, it looks like somebody that I would play in cash games. Going against Washington, I'm telling, just Adam scored a touchdown, Lazard scored a touchdown, Robert Tonyan scored a touchdown. Like, they cannot stop anybody through the air right now. Cortland Sutton, where is he at? He's probably in the 6,000s. Okay, 6,400. I'm going to have a ton of Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick this week. I think for cash games, like Tim Patrick's at 4,700 to give you salary savings, he's getting, you know, a healthy amount of targets, enough to consider for cash games. And there's no one else really in this range. Like, you're going to have to pay down at one of the receiver positions in cash games this week. And there's nobody else that is consistent at all. Robbie Anderson, you would think he's seen, what 40 targets in his last 4 games, and he's at 4,700. Like, if he had done anything with those targets at 4,700, he would be a lock button. Everybody would play him. But somehow Robbie Anderson has pulled off having 40 targets and less than 100 yards to show for it. That, I don't know if that's ever happened in NFL history with that. Like that, like how do you do that? Especially for a player like him who usually is stretching the field. It doesn't make any sense to me how this man has 40 targets and less than 100 yards. It's crazy. So and he gets to play Atlanta. I mean, this might be just the final week. Like, if he can't do it, he couldn't do it against the Giants. I've been playing him every single week with the amount of targets he gets, and then he just burns me every time. I'm still going to probably play him in tournaments against Atlanta, but you can't play him in cash games. I'm going to put Tim Patrick in here. So that leaves you $5,700 left, so you can kind of come up to the 5K range for your next receiver. Oh, T. Higgins at 5,200. That seems like a misprice. Yeah, I don't think people realize it's because Chase just had an absolute incredible game. But I don't think people realize Higgins had 15 targets as well. Higgins is still a very good receiver, and he's seeing 6+ targets every single game. You know, probably averaging closer to like eight targets a game. At his price tag going against the Jets, I mean, he's going to be extremely popular, I think, this week, or he should be. And I think you definitely play him in cash games. So that leaves us 6,200 for the last flex spot. And let's see who we can get in here. So we can get in Patterson, Damian Harris, Lockett. Honestly, I think Hubbard is the best play in here. Just because, like, comparing him to Damian Harris and Patterson, Damian Harris doesn't see any targets really, so that immediately puts Hubbard above him. And then Patterson, Carolina does at least have a decent rush defense, and Hubbard pretty much has the whole backfield to himself, like he's playing almost all the snaps, whereas Patterson kind of rotates out a little bit more. So I think it's just he has a little bit higher of a floor here. So I think this is a really solid first look team. Again, with injury news as the week goes on, I know things change, but I think this is like a really, really good first look lineup. And I think I'm going to start making a video at the end of the week giving my final thoughts on just an overall roster construction and after all the injury news is broken. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you tomorrow for the breakdown of the Thursday Night Football Showdown slate between the Cards and the Packers. Should be a really good game. If you could please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. It helps out the channel a ton. But thank you guys for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.